Learning Module, Probability Trees and Conditional Expectations. Topic, Expected Value and Variance. A firm's earnings per share, EPS, is expected to follow this probability distribution. There is a 0.25 probability that EPS will be $3.20. There is a 0.35 probability that EPS will be $2.80. There is a 0.20 probability that EPS will be $2.40. There is a 0.20 probability that EPS will be $2. Based on this information, the expected EPS and standard deviation are closest to A 2.66 and 0.42, B 2.66 and 0.18, C 0.66 and 0.42. Calculate the expected value first before you can calculate variance or standard deviation. Use the standard formulas for a discrete random variable, probability-weighted average, not sample statistics. There is no division by n-1. Topic, Probability Trees and Conditional Expectations. An analyst is evaluating TechCo's earnings. Probability of strong economy equals 0.55. Probability of weak economy equals 0.45. If strong, probability of successful launch equals 0.70. If weak, probability of successful launch equals 0.40. EPS outcomes are as follows. If the economy is strong and the launch is successful, probability 0.385, EPS is $4. If the economy is strong and the launch fails, probability 0.165, EPS is $2.80. If the economy is weak and the launch is successful, probability 0.180, EPS is $2.50. If the economy is weak and the launch fails, probability 0.270, EPS is $1.60. What is the expected EPS for TechCo? A 2.55, B 2.88, C 3.05. An analyst is evaluating TechCo's earnings. Probability of strong economy equals 0.55. Probability of weak economy equals 0.45. If strong, probability of successful launch equals 0.70. If weak, probability of successful launch equals 0.40. EPS outcomes are as follows. If the economy is strong and the launch is successful, probability 0.385, EPS is $4. If the economy is strong and the launch fails, probability 0.165, EPS is $2.80. If the economy is weak and the launch is successful, probability 0.180, EPS is $2.50. If the economy is weak and the launch fails, probability 0.270, EPS is $1.60. What is the conditional variance of TechCo's EPS on each economy? A 0.302 and 0.194. B 1.642 and 0.610. C 0.674 and 0.3055. An analyst is evaluating TechCo's earnings. Probability of strong economy equals 0.55. Probability of weak economy equals 0.45. If strong, probability of successful launch equals 0.70. If weak, probability of successful launch equals 0.40. EPS outcomes are as follows. If the economy is strong and the launch is successful, probability 0.385, EPS is $4. If the economy is strong and the launch fails, probability 0.165, EPS is $2.80. If the economy is weak and the launch is successful, probability 0.180, EPS is $2.50. If the economy is weak and the launch fails, probability 0.270, EPS is $1.60. Calculate the unconditional expected value. A 3.05. B 2.55. C 2.88. An analyst is evaluating TechCo's earnings. Probability of strong economy equals 0.55. Probability of weak economy equals 0.45. If strong, probability of successful launch equals 0.70. If weak, probability of successful launch equals 0.40. EPS outcomes are as follows. If the economy is strong and the launch is successful, probability 0.385, EPS is $4. If the economy is strong and the launch fails, probability 0.165, EPS is $2.80. If the economy is weak and the launch is successful, probability 0.180, EPS is $2.50. If the economy is weak and the launch fails, probability 0.270, EPS is $1.60. The joint probabilities of each outcome are most likely a 0.385, 0.165, 0.1800.27. B 0.1480, 0.0270, 0.0320.073. C 0.2690, 0.490.0720.162. The total probability rule for expected value states that the unconditional expected value of a random variable can be expressed as the sum of the conditional expected values given each scenario, weighted by the probability of each scenario. Be the product of the conditional expected value and the probability of the scenario. See the conditional expected value given the most likely scenario. An analyst constructs a two-period probability tree to forecast a stock's price in 6 months. At the end of the tree, there are 4 possible price outcomes. The analyst then calculates a value at each node moving from the end back to the start. The primary goal of this backward calculation is to determine A. The most likely stock price outcome. B. The current expected present value of the stock. C. The total number of price paths in the tree. The question provides the joint probabilities 0.385, 0.165, etc. directly in the table. You do not need to multiply the branch probabilities, such as 0.55 times 0.70 to find them. The work is already done for you. This is a straightforward expected value formula. You simply multiply each given probability by its corresponding EPS and sum the results. The 4 scenarios are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. Probabilities sum to 1.0, ensuring you capture all possible outcomes. You must calculate the expected value conditioned on each scenario first. You cannot use the joint probabilities 0.385 for this. You use the conditional probabilities given the economy 0.70.3 and 0.40.6. The variance calculation depends on the scenario's own conditional mean, 3.64 for strong, 1.96 for weak, not the overall expected value of the firm. The weights used in the conditional variance are the probabilities, given that the scenario occurs, such as 0.7 and 0.3, ensuring the analysis isolates risk within each economic state. Calculate the expected value conditioned on each scenario first. Then weight those conditional expectations by the probability of the scenario occurring. The result, $2.884, matches the previous direct calculation using joint probabilities. This confirms that the probability tree is internally consistent. This is the foundation of building a probability tree. How joint probabilities are derived by multiplying the probability of the scenario, economy, by the conditional probability given that scenario, launch outcome. Mutually exclusive and exhaustive. The 4 joint probabilities 0.385, 0.165, 0.1800, 0.270 sum to 1.0, confirming they cover all possible outcomes. These calculated joint probabilities match the probabilities provided in the previous questions tables, verifying the tree is internally consistent. The total probability rule for expected value is clearly defined. The unconditional expected value is the sum of conditional expected values, weighted by scenario probabilities. This directly matches choice A. B is incorrect because it represents only one term of the rule, not the full sum across all scenarios. C is incorrect because focusing only on the most likely scenario ignores other possible outcomes, which violates the principle of expected value. The backward calculation in a probability tree is used to determine the current expected present value of the stock by working from terminal outcomes back to the starting node. This directly matches choice B. A is incorrect because the most likely outcome is identified by the highest terminal probability, not by backward calculation. C is incorrect because the total number of price paths is determined when building the tree forward, not during backward valuation. Topic: Bayes formula and updating probability estimates. An analyst estimates a 55% probability that interest rates will decline next year. If rates decline, there is a 75% probability that the real estate sector will outperform the market. If rates do not decline, there is a 20% probability the real estate sector will outperform. Given the new information that the real estate sector did not outperform, what is the probability that interest rates will not decline? A. 82%. B. 28%. C. 72%. An equity analyst is evaluating whether a company will beat earnings expectations. Before new data, she believes there is a 40% prior probability the company will beat expectations. Historically, when companies beat expectations, a positive earnings guidance revision occurs 70% of the time. When companies do not beat expectations, positive guidance is issued only 20% of the time. This quarter, the company issued a positive guidance revision. What is the updated posterior probability that the company will beat earnings expectations? A. 80%. B. 30%. C. 70%. An analyst has established the following prior probabilities regarding a company's quarterly sales performance relative to analyst forecasts. Sales exceed forecast equals 35%. Sales meet forecast equals 45%. Sales fall short of forecast equals 20%. A week before releasing its earnings report, the company announces a product recall. The analyst estimates the likelihood of a product recall, given sales outcomes as follows. Product recall if sales exceed forecast equals 10%. Product recall if sales meet forecast P recall meet forecast equals 15%. Product recall if sales fall short of forecast P recall fall short equals 60%. Given this new information, what is the updated posterior probability that the company's sales will fall short of forecast? 16%. B. 54%. C. 30%. An equity analyst is evaluating the probability that Tech Corp will report strong quarterly revenue growth. Based on historical analysis, the analyst assigns the following prior probabilities for revenue performance. P. Revenue growth exceeded expectations equals 0.45. P. Revenue growth met expectations equals 0.40. P. Revenue growth fell short of expectations equals 0.15. Before the earnings announcement, Tech Corp announces a major partnership with a leading cloud provider. The analyst believes this partnership announcement provides insight into the company's quarterly performance and estimates the following conditional probabilities. P. Partnership announcement revenue exceeded expectations equals 0.60. P. Partnership announcement revenue met expectations equals 0.30. P. Partnership announcement revenue fell short of expectations equals 0.20. Using Bayes' theorem, Calculate the probability that Tech Corp's revenue growth exceeded expectations given the partnership announcement. P. Revenue exceeded expectations partnership announcement is closest to A 64%, B 42%, C 27%. Unconditional probabilities have prior event in new information. Prior event A can have many outcomes, but only two outcomes here, A1 and A2. Total both outcomes equal 100%. New information B has B1 and B2. Understand which part is prior event in new information. Conditional probability is when one, B exists because other, A, supports it. Performance exists when rate supports it. Sector outperforms when rates decline. This tells you which event is A or B. Understand unconditional and conditional probabilities. You can calculate joint probabilities. We also need to get unconditional probability of new information PB. Divide the relevant joint probability by the unconditional probability to update beliefs. This yields the posterior probability that rates will not decline given the sector did not outperform 72%. The is how to define prior probabilities, beat versus not beat, and conditional probabilities, revision given beat or not beat. This sets the foundation for Bayes' formula. Calculate joint probabilities, prior times conditional, and sum them to get the unconditional probability of revision. This denominator is critical for Bayes' formula. Divide the relevant joint probability by the unconditional probability to update beliefs. This shows how the posterior probability of beating expectations rises to 70% once the positive guidance revision is observed. Unconditional probabilities have prior event in new information. Prior event here is sales, with three outcomes here, equal to 100%. New information here is product recall, with only one outcome. Conditional probability is when one, B exists because other, A, supports it. In this case, there are three outcomes of prior event in, only one outcome of new information, PB1. Joint probability is to get unconditional probability of new information, PB. Posterior probabilities equals joint probability divided by unconditional probability. These are the results of probability of product recall, PB1. If sales exceed expectation, PA1, and probability of product recall, PB1. If sales meet expectation, PA2. Clear distinction between prior probabilities. The analyst's original beliefs about revenue and likelihoods. The conditional probability of the partnership occurring given those revenue outcomes. Use the total probability rule to find the unconditional probability of the new information, 0.42. This step is critical because this value must serve as the denominator in Bayes' formula. Now reverse the conditional information. By dividing the relevant joint probability, 0.27, by the unconditional denominator, 0.42. The prior probability of 45% is updated to a posterior probability of 64.3%.